Good morning and welcome to worship for August 29th. Wherever you are tuning in from, I'm glad you have found your way here. I also trust that part of the reason you have found your way here is for a sense of connection with others. And I'm guessing part of the reason you have found your way here is because you know a pull upon your life that calls you into goodness, that calls you to grow, and that calls this world to grow in goodness. So this morning we have Jesus telling us about that, about what it means to be different from how we always have been in the Sermon on the Mount. So I hope you'll stay for that. We get to enjoy Tom and Bev Sawyer sharing with us, both as readers, but also in the Faces of Faith conversation. Tom is our Minister Emeritus, and we're grateful to have both him and Bev in our midst, serving and working alongside us as people of Riverbend United Church. We also will see some of the photos that our members have sent in this summer in the section of worship called Faith on the Move. Our thanks to Carolyn Miller for obtaining those photos from you people and putting them together in the video. I invite us to take a breath of the Spirit as we prepare to worship together. We'll sing our Introit with the choir, Behold.
Could you please join me in the call to worship? The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it. For he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? And who shall stand in the holy place? Those who have clean hands and a pure hearts, those who do not lift up their souls to what is false and do not swear deceitfully. They will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from God, the God of their salvation. Such is the company of those who seek the face of God, the God of Jacob. Please join in the singing of Be Thou My Vision, led by the Riverbend United Church Choir.
Be thou my vision, O joy of my heart. The gospel reading is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 to 9. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God."
Thank you to Bev for reading that. I recently saw a tweet by a contemporary spiritual teacher named Eckhart Tolle. The tweet was pointing to a podcast by Tolle where he describes how important it is for us to be disciplined in our use of our mobile devices, like cell phones and such, because he says they are an extension of the human mind and are highly addictive. So I read this description of the podcast on Twitter on my phone, and then I laughed at the irony of that. And then later that evening, I headed out the door for a walk, and I had my phone in my hand, and I was scrolling through it looking for someone's phone number to call, not watching where I was going. And the sidewalk I was on merged onto a bike path. So head down, fingers scrolling, feet walking. I had a near-death experience. Well, I exaggerate, but it felt like that. Just as I merged onto the bike path, a very quiet bike was coming and had to swerve to avoid me. The close call scared me, and I reacted. I reacted from a fight or flight, fear-based, dinosaur brain survival instinct. For the record, I'm not proud of this, but I used the D word. You might know the one I mean. I used dude. Dude, I exclaimed as he rolled by with this stealth bike of his so silently. Dude, use a bell. He could have responded with any number of things at that point that would have immediately showed me how wrong I was. He could have said, for instance, "You watch where you're going." Or he could have said, "Your sidewalk merged onto mine." Or he could have said, "I had the right of way," because he did. Any of those responses to my outcry would have been justified, and I would like to think that I would have immediately seen the truth of it. But instead, he said the one thing that gave my wrongful, instinctive reaction wiggle room. He said, as he pedaled down the path, Take your earbuds out. To which I, still in my self-righteous, fear-based dinosaur brain instinctive reaction, replied, louder now because he was rolling away, "They aren't even on yet." He rode on a few more pedals, and then somewhere inside his own reacting system, right in the heat of his anger at me, it seems he flipped. His heart turned. He changed. He was almost out of range when he turned his head around and yelled, "I'm sorry." I immediately flipped too. In my heart, I was turned by his turn, changed by his change. I was flipped right out of this instinctive, fear-based dinosaur brain reaction and into a higher awareness that always includes humility. I yelled at the top of my lungs to be sure he heard it. "I'm sorry too. That was my bad." I tell you this, embarrassing as it is, to illustrate that we don't have to be like I was. We don't have to react from instinct or fear. Those are old programs, and though they have carried humanity and animals before us thus far, we know something better now, something higher, something more profound, something filled with expansive goodness rather than with the contracting protection of these old programs. We can evolve beyond these old programs, this old conditioning. We need not still let them run us. I believe this is part of what Jesus is telling us in the Sermon on the Mount. I believe he's turning us inside out, upside down, flipping us. I remember when I was a young radical minister serving my first solo ministry church, I read this passage, the Beatitudes that Bev just read, literally standing on my head in the sanctuary in worship. My clergy robe and stole fell to my shoulders, resting on the ground. I somehow thought, I think I somehow thought that the drama of reading it literally standing on my head might make the point of what Jesus was telling us. Apparently it didn't work, even for me, given how I reacted to the bicyclist. Jesus doesn't need our dramatic renderings. He needs our hearts. Once we give our hearts, then the intention that rises from our given hearts belongs also to him, to love. And then our lives follow. Our words, our footsteps, our actions. Slowly they follow, perhaps, our lives. But when our hearts are given, our lives will be going in the right direction. We become more ready to flip, listening for opportunities to flip, like the man on the bike who flipped me by his flip. Not to be confused with flip off, just flip. There was no flipping off. Flip like a turning of the heart. Of course, we will naturally stumble and fall, as did I on the bike path. And then, as soon as we see it, as soon as we see that we are contracting rather than expanding, we flip. We get up gently and we go again. Eventually, maybe we become those who flip others, as he did, the man on the bike. Not without backsliding ourselves, him, but eventually maybe we become more staid in our response as love, rather than sealing our feet in our reaction as protective instinct. Who would have the guts to say that the key to life is not in strength, but in meekness, as Jesus does in this passage? That it isn't in richness, but in being poor in spirit? He says it's about being pure in heart, which, as far as I can tell, has absolutely nothing to do with our mental or physical abilities or our economic means or with what kind of work we do, but rather being pure in heart has only to do with love, with being given to love. And everyone can be given to love, no matter what. These days, as chaos prevails in Afghanistan, as violence rages in our city streets, as overdoses and depression increase, as the virus divides us into haves and have-nots, as climate change looms, as trust in global economic systems disintegrates, I can't help but believe that it's time for humanity to flip and grow up. I believe my reaction on the bike path, extrapolated out, is the root of humanity's woes. I believe it's the same old program of fear-based instinctive response that eventually turns from a reaction on a bike path to a land besieged by tribal war. And I use the word tribal liberally here. If that's true, then it's also true that turning it around starts with each of us in the quietude of our own hearts, listening for the better way, the higher way, and flipping, turning, changing. It starts with us responding to love, as love, from love, rather than reacting out of anything self-protective and contracting. I'm not talking about when we're in actual danger. That's different. I'm talking about all the protective, contracting programming embedded in us that has us living for me and mine. I'm talking about that part of us that can flip and turn expansive. I'm talking about us growing, evolving individually and together, right in the middle of pressure, just as we are collectively now as humanity. Eckhart Tolle put it this way: evolution usually occurs in response to a crisis situation, and we are now faced with such a crisis. This is why there is indeed an enormous acceleration in the awakening process of our species. And he goes on, a significant portion of the Earth's population will soon recognize, if they haven't already done so, that humanity is now faced with a stark choice: evolve or die. I believe this is Jesus' invitation in the Sermon on the Mount. It's an invitation to cease reacting from the old way. It's an invitation to turn, to change, to be flipped in any given moment, in any little thing, in every little thing, whenever we see it. Whenever we see that we're being contracted, instead to open and be expansive. It's an invitation to rise into new consciousness. Jesus calls it new life, abundant life, eternal life, now. In the Sermon on the Mount, I believe Jesus is inviting us to evolve, telling us there's a new way, one that may feel upside down, but is filled with eternal goodness. And it starts with each of us, letting ourselves be flipped, turned, changed, opening in any given moment, right into love. Maybe we can give it a go. Amen. Today's Faces of Faith conversation is with Rev.Tom and Bev Sawyer. And I'm delighted to have both of you talk with us. Just give us, if you could tell us, well, first, today's a special day for the two of you, right?
Yes.
As I understand it, it's your 59th anniversary?
That's right. Yep, 59 years.
I won't ask who's to be commended more. So could you just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your connection to the church?
Sure. Well, I mean, my connection goes back a very long way. My family was active in Highlands United Church here in Edmonton. And so I attended Sunday school there and CGIT and youth group. And it's funny how demographics change things, because at the time that I was involved in CGIT, we were told that ours was the largest group in Alberta. And that's probably true. I know we had something like 150 members of girls ages grade 7 to 12. So yeah, so I was involved in those years. And then as time went on after high school, I became involved in young people's, and both at the local level and then Presbyterian Conference. And that's where Tom and I sort of got together. Mm-hmm. And then after that, after we were married, then of course my involvement depended on where Tom was. But I guess I'll say that I really resisted the notion of the minister's wife having particular responsibilities or obligations. So I didn't involve myself much in any particular, besides those were the years we were having kids. And so it suited me quite well to keep it that way.
Okay.
And then as time went on, my attendance was, of course, wherever Tom was working.
And eventually that was Riverbend.
Eventually it was Riverbend, and that's sort of a long and winding road, because at a certain point, Tom's sort of involvement shifted a bit, and he became more involved with intentional interim ministry. And so he was out of town quite a bit. And at that point, I shifted over to Riverbend for two reasons, I guess. One, it was our neighborhood church, and also there was Bill, and my family and Bill's family were long time connected. My father and Bill's father were friends before either of them were married. And so it sort of worked out well in that way too.
And you're talking about Bill Cantillon, who served Riverbend for 10 years, some years ago. Yeah, good.
Yes,
and Tom, how about you?
I have very deep Methodist roots. Let's say one of my cousins has a book that traveled around with the Wesleys, somebody in Wesley's party. So it goes right back, as far back as you can go in Methodism. And my Sawyer relatives were very active and involved in the church, and we automatically turned to the United Church in whatever community we were in. So that just kind of flowed naturally. We arrived in Edmonton on a Good Friday. My family was tied up with my sister was 3.5, my brother 1.5, and unpacking from the train trip. And I walked to Highlands Church on my own on Easter Sunday morning. And as Bev said, I grew up in Highlands, was very involved with youth. And I don't know when I actually met Bev, because we knew each other long before we actually started going together. And in the ministry, it's led me to many different places. And my work that actually, we used to have the 4 levels, the local, the presbytery, the conference, and general council. And I've been involved at all the levels. And as Bev said, more recently, I've been doing intentional interim work. And then my health kind of laid me low, and I've been spending the last 2.5 years regaining my strength. And I think I'm almost there. But so the church has always been part of my life.
Well, and you're our minister emeritus, and so I've always relied on you for your wisdom, and you've stepped in and helped us out from time to time, and we're grateful for that. With both of you, I know, Bev, you do some other things for the church. Like, I know right now you're working on our newsletter, but you've done a lot of other things through the years for Riverbend. What inspires both of you to give of your time, your energy, your resources to the local church, in particular to this one?
Well, it's what you do if you're involved with something and you care about it. You feel a duty, if you like, to participate. And I guess that was the way that my participation evolved. The first formal participation for me was when Bill asked if I would become a member of the Ministry and Personnel Committee, and then things just sort of went on from there for me. And this is the first church where I've had what I would consider the sort of freedom to have that kind of involvement, because Tom's situation was different than in the other churches.
Because now you're on your own. You're not simply
That's right.
the minister's wife.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
And do you know? So it's the participation. It's what you give back. That's why you do it.
That's right.
Yeah. And how about for you, Tom?
Well, I've always felt a deep commitment to the church. And the church, I'm not talking about the local congregation, I'm talking about the church. And there are times that I think I've made decisions to give time to the church, and rather than my family, it was kind of tough. And this is part of the thing about going to places like Barrhead and Lloydminster. They couldn't follow me there, and I was sort of on my own there. And Bev was the real Riverbend contact.
Exactly. In fact, I was just thinking when you asked him that question, for the first time, he followed me to a church.
Okay. Yeah.
And 1958, I was in my second year of engineering when I felt a sense of a call, and I switched over to arch program, and since then I felt called to many different specific things to do, like taking on the new church development role. Might sound kind of conceited, but I couldn't see anybody else taking on that role but me. And I know when the situation happened at Barrhead, where the minister, the chair of the board, and the church secretary all resigned within a week of each other, and things really hit the fan. And I was involved in the presbytery ministry and personnel committee, and once again, I couldn't see us sending anybody else in there. And I went into it, and I think we did some very creative things. And so it's been specific calls to specific activities. And when I finished at Barrhead, I told Bev, well, finally we can go to church together. And what happened? Bill resigned to accept a call at Victoria, and the congregation went to conference and said, we need an interim minister. Are there any available? I was sitting in the pew.
There you are.
The pew to the pulpit. And so it's a sense of commitment to specific things. And this is where I am right now. I'm searching and trying to define what I am called to do at this specific time. And I'm working on that.
Well, we appreciate everything you do, Tom, for the church, both of you. And I think you're a big help to me. So if I could ask you the same question I've been asking our lay leaders all summer, where do you tend to look for the sacred, the holy, the divine, God, whatever word you want to give it? Where do you tend to seek the sacred?
I'm not sure that I do see it, actually.
Sorry, Bev, say that again.
I'm not sure that I do actually seek.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are moments, and I think they come for me with particular family situations, friends situations. They're tied up with relationships. That the type of moment that I think you're asking about. But I think I don't actively go seeking.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's more like where the sacred finds you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Just pops in. Yeah. With relationships, connection with others.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Good.
And sometimes with music, I guess. Just some music, the beauty of some music sort of evokes, I guess, that kind of feeling sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Evokes is a good word. Thanks.
Okay. For a minister, I guess I'm kind of funny. I'm not very pious. In other words, I don't spend a lot of time on my knees. But I assume that God is working in and through me. I had a minister friend who said I have kinetic meditation, and that I act and hope and pray that God is working through me. And many things have affirmed that type of thing through life. there are times that I need to retreat and be alone. I built a waterfall at our previous house and had a park bench that I'd sit on sometimes. And here we set up the patio with our flowers and so on. And I often just sit and don't particularly think of anything, just quietly relax. And often I have a sense of insight, and I act upon it. Now, is that where I seek spirituality? I don't know. It's just the assumption that God is with me and God is pushing me, and sometimes works out almost miraculously. And right now I'm saying, why did I survive that surgery 2.5 years ago? When the family gathered on at least one occasion thinking I wasn't going to make it till morning. God must have something in store for me. I haven't quite determined what that is.
Okay, well, thank you both. Yeah, it's beautiful wisdom, connection, as well as just the Spirit flowing through us. I appreciate that. And I know everyone would want to wish you, if they could right now, a happy anniversary, 59 years, well done. And we're glad you're still here, Tom, and I'm sure Bev is as well. But both of you give so much and in your presence amongst us, and we're grateful for you.
Thank you. And we're grateful for you and your presence and your ministry.
Yes.
Thank you. Blessings to both of you.
And you.
Bye.
He makes me down to
Let us pray. God, we gather electronically with complex thoughts and concerns. We are living through a fourth wave of COVID-19, with so many of our society reluctant to trust the science of vaccination that we trusted to stop killers such as smallpox and polio. We are facing election of leadership for our nation, for our city, and for our schools. Social media, very subjective, often unconfirmable and wrong, has replaced trusted news sources. We feel we are lost in a fog, not knowing what way to face to journey forward through life. We need our shepherd to help us in that journey. We need the assurance of the Beatitudes. When our spirits are low, we are glad to hear the kingdom of heaven is ours. When we mourn, we need to know your comforting presence. When we feel that apparently powerful people are in control, it is affirming that it is the meek who will inherit the earth. When injustice reigns for Blacks, women, especially women under the Taliban, Indigenous people, and so many others, it is blessed to know those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled. And blessings come to the merciful, the pure in heart, and the peacemakers. God, may we feel your presence as we move through the mists and challenges that threaten to overwhelm us. Thank you for the blessings we have. Amen.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the sweet, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It finds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though my joys and comforts die, my Savior still is living. What though the shadows gather round, a new song Christ is giving. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to the rock I'm clinging. Since love commands both heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? I lift my eyes, the cloud grows thin, I see the blue above it, and day by day this pathway smooths, since first I learned to love it. The peace of Christ makes fresh my heart, a fountain ever springing. All things are mine since I am Christ. How can I keep from singing?
I'm glad you popped in to worship with us this morning. Remember, we are planning at this point to return to in-person worship on September 12th. We will be asking everyone to wear masks for that, and we will be live streaming it out for those who are more comfortable continuing to worship online at home. And now we go forth with the words of the prophet Micah. What is it that God requires of us? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk ever so humbly with our God. Go in peace, friends, as our choir sings us out.